Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, you're kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it. Hey everyone, it's Debbie, and I want to share some of the information I'm going to be talking about on the Low Carb Cruise 2023 coming up in a week. And my topic is about stress, chronic stress, not the good acute stress, but how chronic stress can impact the whole you. And I put together so many slides that I made another ebook for you. So soon you can find on my website, debbiepotts.net, free ebook, Chronic Stress Impacts the Whole You. And we're going a little bit deeper into how stress impacts your digestion, your gut health, your immune system, your blood sugar, insulin, everything. So I couldn't talk about all that in 45 minutes, so I put it into slides. But first of all, if you don't know who I am, if you've been following me for a while, maybe you don't know, my background is being in the fitness industry as a personal trainer, ran my own fitness studio for 10 years, Fitness Forward Studio, luckily closed it October 2019. I'm certified NASM personal trainer. I've done metabolic efficiency specialist training and testing, and just started doing that again with Pinoe Metabolic Testing Cart. I've done Ben Greenfield's coaching program 2011, started doing the Superhuman Coach program. Then he did a Keon Coach program, and then created the Ben Greenfield coaching program with us Keon coaches. And some of us are all the way back from the Superhuman Coach days. So I've done a lot of continuing education just because I always want to learn more and understand why and how to help the whole individual. It's not just exercise. I became a nutritional therapy practitioner, Paul Chek's Institute, the holistic lifestyle coach certification. Before that, as USA Triathlon coach. The Keon Coach program I said was 2019, was more the Ben Greenfield coaching program. DNA fit training I've done. And then I really wanted to learn how to run functional lab tests and understand why things may be off when we do nutritional therapy assessment. So I became FDN practitioner. So we act as a health investigator to help figure out why things are happening, spend a little more time than a doctor, functional medicine, naturopath might have. And really, ideally, everyone works as a team together to help people feel their best and live their best life. But as an FDN practitioner, tying what I do with a nutritional therapy practitioner training, put that all together to help put the missing pieces of the puzzle together for clients that just can't figure out what's wrong and why things are happening. So really working on my background as an Ironman athlete. So I work with a lot of different people, but endurance athletes, females lately be coming to me that are my age, premenopausal, menopausal transformation time or transition time. And what I've learned over the years is putting everything together, the holistic method that I'm working on, nutrition and exercise, but also the sleep and the stress and the movement, mobility, and the importance of digestion and gut health and hydration and happiness. So what I'm trying to find out for more people is, do you struggle with fatigue? Do you feel broken and burned out from the inside out? Do you struggle with fat loss, not just weight loss, but losing fat, even though you're doing all the right things? And if you have any mood issues, do you feel kind of the brain fog? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel emotional, depressed? Do you struggle with different things and you don't know why? You just don't get it. What's going on with you? So I know personally that you could be doing all the right things that we hear about out there with low carb, no carb, keto, carnivore, whatever, but sometimes it's just still not enough. You're not figuring out what your body needs because you are unique. So you could be struggling. And as I had happened to me 10 years ago, I went from top of my age group, Ironman athlete, doing marathons, 50K races. I went in 2013, January. I remember I did Carlsbad Marathon. I was doing good, but started to get a little slower. Couldn't figure out what's going on. Then I did this 50K trail race in Bellingham that February. And then March, I just was like, gosh, I don't feel good. And then I went to this retreat for my Todd Durkin mastermind group. And I was doing fasted exercise and really so strict with what I was eating. I was eating mostly fat, focusing on not eating anything that if it wasn't on my list, and I wasn't eating enough, and went and did a speed workout in that afternoon. I remember going out for we went out to a winery, took this party bus, and I wrote a whole chapter of it in my book. I wrote, "Life is not a race, it is a journey," because that is when I really realized something was wrong with me. And so I gained weight, but not only did I gain weight, I felt fatigued and I was feeling sick from those glasses of wine I had on our mastermind retreat party bus experience. I got super sick and really awful experience that night and was pretty much hungover for a week. So I knew something was wrong with my liver, couldn't detoxify the alcohol. And again, I wasn't eating. So I was probably drinking on an empty stomach and don't really drink. And then I had alcohol and it hit me hard. But that was just a red flag. And so what I'm trying to do now is help people understand those red flags that come along, to pay attention to them. Know that when you're not feeling your optimal self, when you feel a little bit off, pay attention to those red flags. So when you're starting to gain weight, you don't know, okay, what's going on? I didn't change anything. I'm exercising, I'm eating real food, and maybe you are doing too much of everything. And I went through years of trying to get help. I was seeing all these different doctors, naturopaths, functional medicine, doing acupuncture. I felt like no one could understand what was wrong with me. Why am I struggling? Other people could do all these races. They could do a busy schedule, burning the candle at both ends and survive. But I wasn't that person. And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong, and no one could help me. And I just felt really lost and alone, which caused depression and frustration. And I wanted the instant pill. I wanted to just get fixed now, and wondered, okay, what's going on? So I gained all this weight, felt fatigued. I was not able to train and race anymore. I just had naps in the afternoon. I was wide awake at 2 a.m. I was struggling to get through the day, and just started to have my body completely change. And I felt like I had got headaches, I had more food sensitivities, and the list went on. So I got help from a practitioner that was working with Dr. Kalish, the Kalish method. She used me as her case study. I started to get some help, but I realized there are reasons, and you have to figure out, what are your areas that you need help with? And for me, it was me needing to change my lifestyle. It wasn't just nutrition. I was already doing all the right things nutritionally, eating clean food, keeping my inflammatory foods out of my daily plan, but I was probably, not eating enough calories for the amount of activity level I was doing before I started to have naps instead of a workout. But what I learned was more is not better. Too much of anything is toxic. Too little of anything leads to deficiencies. Genetics make a difference. Some people, as I said, could tolerate more stress. I could not. More toxins. I couldn't. I'm more sensitive. So I have to be more supportive of my liver detox pathways and the nutrients needed to support detox. I was more prone to metabolic chaos, this whole domino effect of all these issues that happen when stress is on. As we'll go through, everything is turned off pretty much. And chronic anything doesn't lead to positive ending. Anything you do too much of is not great. So you hear a lot of people talk nowadays about variation, varying your fasting and eating windows, varying your food plan, going a strict keto carnivore for 30 days, reset your gut. And then maybe you do a carb refeed. Maybe you go into more of a keto plan, and then maybe go into more higher carb, nature's carbs refeed. And vary, as Dr. Anna had in her book we've talked about a couple of times on our show, I just think is a great plan. And mixing things up, as Ben Azadi talks about on Keto Flex. And so varying everything, even your workouts, switching things up. And chronic fatigue isn't just it's not your adrenals that are broken. It's just the entire system is overloaded. And when we have the hypothalamus talking to the pituitary gland, it also talks not just to the adrenals, but to your sex hormones, your ovaries, gonads, and then your thyroid. So we have to really realize this hormonal imbalance comes from just how we respond to stress. So we'll talk about that and the impact of your mitochondria and your gut. So more is not better, the Goldilocks effect, the right amount needed for you. So signs and symptoms of metabolic chaos. So we talk about gut health. Leaky gut leads to often leaky brain and inflammation in our body. So we have this intestinal mucosal barrier. So if you look at the screens, if you're watching the video, it's easier to see all the slides I'll share. But if you see over on the one side, our tight junctions between the cells, kind of keep the guards on duty. So bad stuff, food particles that are undigested, medications, endotoxins, they don't seep through that barrier. And so you can see on the right, the tight junctions are not yet developed or they're compromised. And so we have these little gaps, and intestinal mucosal cells might have more space in between them. And then the villi, the shag carpet, gets damaged. So we don't absorb nutrients as well as have those gaps into. So we get these little holes in our gut we call leaky gut, and they seep through into the bloodstream. So what is metabolic chaos? We talk about this all the time on my podcast. So detox capacity is altered. Your hormone, immune, carb metabolism, your musculoskeletal health, your motility issues, your brain fog, cloudy thinking, your sleep, your digestive enzymes are altered, your thyroid function, your adrenal, stress, and sex hormones are altered. Your mucosal surface is, the integrity of that mucosal barrier is damaged potentially. So you need to look at all of this is connected when we get off balance. We talk in our FDN practitioner program as chronic stress. This cascade happens. So what the founder of our FDN practitioner program calls it is metabolic chaos. Reed Davis is the founder, talks about distress of any kind contributes loss of homeostasis, contributes to loss of homeostasis, dysfunction, dis-ease, and eventually metabolic chaos. If this chronic stress is left untreated, more symptoms appear downstream, and only treating symptoms leads to more dysfunction. So symptoms may be far removed from the stressors found upstream. So not just treating things with the Band-Aid, but treating them with a holistic approach and figuring out the why and what's causing the problem, getting to the root causes and working on changing our lifestyle habits, working on nutritional therapy, figure out what supplements you might need for a while to reboot and reset your system, heal and repair your gut. And we need to just look at the whole person from the inside out, because those external chronic stressors and the hidden internal sources of chronic stressors will accumulate. And we don't know what those internal sources of chronic stress are unless we identify them with functional lab testing. And then we have to learn how to manage or change our external sources of chronic stress, our way of dealing with stress or approaching it differently. And I always have the picture here on my slide as a faucet. If we have that leaky faucet, drip, 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 that constant stress, similar to that, right? So we want to turn on the stress, turn it off. Acute stress is okay, but when it's chronic, it's not so good. So we want to get lab testing. In the doctor's labs, you might go say, hey, your labs are normal. So I went to see 8 different doctors trying to get help. Regular medicine would say, hey, you need some antidepressants. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just all in your head. And I knew this wasn't my normal and I wasn't going to accept it. So I continued to search for help, learning more about what is chronic stress. And as I was in a practitioner course at the time, so I was learning about heart rate variability, sympathetic dominance, heart rate, changes in heart rate variability, and how we can test that with our heart rate strap and look at our low frequency to high frequency and look at our vagal tone, and then recognizing symptoms of stress on the body as teeth, grinding your teeth, apathy, trouble concentrating, anger, anxiety, headaches, muscle tension, stomach problems, skin irritations, decreased sex drive, and how stress is on impacts everything, and how we want to balance the nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So what is a stress response? It's the body's autonomic nervous system. It controls heart rate, breathing, vision changes, and more. It's built-in stress response, the fight or flight. We hear about that. Sympathetic response is fight, flight, or freeze, a lot of people say now. That's when we need to respond to that lion chasing us. But when you have a lion chasing you from the time you get up in the morning until you hit the pillow at night and try to go to sleep, that continued activation of the stress response will cause, as anything that's chronic, wear and tear, burnout, and breakdown. Physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms can develop. So what we want to look at is what's going on in your stressors, figure out what are you doing each day? Are you in fight, flight, or freeze daily? Or are you able to have that cute dose of stress as a cold shower and become more resilient? So the fight, flight, freeze means the fight response is triggered. Your body prepares for physical combat. Adrenaline and other stress hormones are released, leading to increased heart rate, blood pressure, muscle tension. Short term, this can cause physical performance gains and enable the person to defend themselves. But if the fight response is constantly activated due to ongoing stressors, it can lead to chronic high blood pressure, cardiovascular problems, increased risk of heart disease. The freeze response is characterized by immobility. Well, this should say freeze. I wrote the wrong words. Fighting or fleeing is not possible or would be ineffective. The freeze response can be adaptive in certain situations, allowing individuals to assess the danger and fight the best course of action. Chronic activation of the freeze response can lead to feeling of helplessness, emotional numbing, and disassociation. If this continues, is what I'm trying to say, it can contribute to the development of anxiety disorders, depression, and PTSD. Now, the flight response prepares the body for rapid escape or avoidance of the threat, involves surge of adrenaline, increased energy, mobilization. Short term, this is good, right? It can enhance speed and your reaction time. But the word chronic all the time is never good. Activation of the flight response can contribute to chronic anxiety, insomnia, digestion issues. Prolonged elevated levels of stress hormones can weaken the immune system, making the individuals more susceptible to illness, right? So I won't go into this, but you can look up the amygdala of the hypothalamus. This sends the signal to the hypothalamus, activate the sympathetic branch of autonomic nervous system. So interesting research on the freeze response. The amygdala is involved in slightly different ways. The freeze response typically activated when amygdala detects overwhelming and different threats. And so anyways, different rabbit hole to go down, but how the chronic stress and how that part of the brain plays in identifying if that's a threat. The regulation of fight, flight, and freeze response. So looking up the limbic system, another rabbit hole I went down. You can see where is the amygdala located. And then we continue. So chronic versus acute stress, increased heart rate, our blood pressure, impact of the stress hormones and immune processes. Our corticosteroids suppresses immune system and disturbance of our digestive system. So all these sources of stress that become nonstop are chronic, and we can lead to this imbalance of the too little stress. You're in this green area, the optimum stress in the yellow, and then we get orange, too much stress when you're overly exhausted. And then if you keep pushing through it and ignore all those red flags, anxiety, panic, anger, breakdown, burnout over on that red side. So that just right amount, that Goldilocks effect. So eustress is a form of stress having beneficial effect on health, motivation, performance, and well-being, versus distress, the type of stress where we're referring to when we say stress with negative implication. So good stress, again, looking at the right amount. So doing that time-restricted eating, cold temperature, heat shock, radiation, germs, physical stress, exercise, all that are cute doses, but we get back, become more resilient. If we did that all the time, too much of anything can lead to problems. So what are signs and symptoms? Common red flags. Well, mental symptoms, as you know, we talked about anxiety, depression, panic attacks. And then we've got physical symptoms, aches, pains, chest pain, exhaustion, trouble sleeping, dizziness, high blood pressure, tension in your jaw. More and more, we can feel that wired and tired. So often when you're having chronic stress, you might feel like you're having to can't wake up unless you have coffee and you're just overdosing coffee for hours all day long. You might feel like you need to crash in the afternoon as you get that 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I need a nap. And then you're tired and get a second wind after you get up from that nap. And then you can't wind down at nighttime. Then you wake up at 2 a.m. Your whole circadian rhythm is off. You might find your body temperature fluctuates as well. Now, unexplained weight gain is part of my investigation of, okay, why did I gain 30 pounds when I was doing low carb, eating healthy foods, getting my healthy fats and protein, lifting weights, doing my strength or interval training, doing my cardio. I was training for Ironmans, marathons. So I was doing exercise. I was fit and leanest shape I've been in, but I gained 30 pounds and lost muscle, gained fat. Why is that? So cortisol can stimulate appetite and cravings. It can promote fat storage, visceral fat around the abdominal organs. So we've got issues there. And cortisol stimulates enzyme lipoprotein lipase, which helps facilitate the uptake and storage of fat in adipose tissues. Insulin resistance is what I feel like I struggled with without testing it back then. But chronic elevation of cortisol levels can contribute to insulin resistance, which is a condition in which the body's cells become less responsive to the effects of insulin. Insulin resistance can disrupt the balance of glucose metabolism and lead to the increase of fat storage, particularly in the abdominal area. And then we have metabolic slowdown. Prolonged exposure to high cortisol may negatively impact metabolism, leading to a slower metabolic rate. A slower metabolism can make it more challenging to burn calories efficiently, potentially leading to weight gain. And then we have disrupted sleep patterns. Elevated cortisol levels can interfere with sleep quality and duration. Poor sleep has been associated with weight gain, obesity, and can affect appetite regulation, metabolism, and energy balance. So, as I said, sleep was an issue for myself. Why is that? Cortisol helps regulate sleep patterns and the body cope with everyday stress. Normal cortisol levels rise during the early morning and highest about 7 a.m., opposite of melatonin. They should drop in the evening as melatonin comes up during early sleep. If you are in a constant state of stress or disrupted sleep schedule, your adrenals can produce too much cortisol, causing disturbances in your sleep patterns. Not so good. All right. Decreased immune function. When stress is on, your immune system's turned down. So when we are stressed, the immune system's ability to fight infections is reduced. Too much cortisol pumping through the body creates systemic inflammation and an overworked immune system. This decreases the body's lymphocytes, which are the white blood cells that fight off infection. The lower your lymphocyte level, the more risk you are for viruses, including common cold and cold sores. Here's the Goldilocks principle. The HP axis is the hypothalamus, pituitary to adrenal axis. And we want to have just the right amount of stress, as I showed in the other image of the HP axis progression. Now, the Goldilocks is think too little, too much, just that right amount to have that positive effects. Think of that hormesis, hormetic stressors, as when you lift weights, you do HIIT training, you work hard, and then you repair and recover. And that's when you get stronger, you're more resilient. If you do the hot cold therapy, if you do that time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting, you are getting that right amount for a beneficial response. But making sure you have time for recovery in between so you can get ready for the next time. Now, here's that HP axis progression. I was just talking about that right amount, the normal, the acute phase, compensatory phase, and then we have the exhaustion phase. You want to be careful you're in that good normal section. If we continue on prolonged chronic stress, acute stress is good, but if we keep getting it to be chronic stress, we get over to acute phase and progress into the compensatory phase. So we adapt, we get used to it, but are you getting it too many different sources of stress? So HPA axis and cortisol, I was talking about cortisol. All of our tissues, almost all of our tissues in our body have glucocorticoid receptors. Note that word gluco is glucose and corticoid, cortisol. So glucose and cortisol are related. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, can affect nearly every organ system in your body. Optimal cortisol levels are necessary for maintaining homeostasis. If you have consistently high or low levels, it can have negative impacts on overall health as HPA axis dysfunction, or what we used to call adrenal fatigue. And then there's adrenal exhaustion, high cortisol, too high cortisol, or too low cortisol. So we naturally should wake up. If you've been wearing a CGM, you'll see this morning rise in your glucose is correlated to a normal rise in your morning awakening response to get you energized and ready to go for the day. So we can test this on the Dutch test, awaking, and then 30 minutes later, then 60 minutes later, you can do this glucose reading. You'll see your glucose goes up, but cortisol will be up after waking about 30 minutes or so. And then you want to be in the green zone, normal, or green is elevated cortisol awakening response in this image from Dr. Jockers. But if you see this increase that is too high, you want to have an individualized protocol. If you're too high or too low, there's different things we'll go into. So testing your cortisol awakening response with the Dutch test or salivary cortisol levels. Dutch test is a dried urine test. A comprehensive hormone test is beneficial. Blood test and urine and saliva, as I said, is the Dutch versus a saliva cortisol level test. Everyone's a little different what they prefer. And then micronutrients is B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, calcium can be depleted during chronic stress. So checking your micronutrients is another test you can do. Help identify anything low levels, as well as I like a HTMA hair tissue mineral test. So you want to see what your levels are during the day, if you're in this normal range or if you're too high or too low. And that's what we'll see from your cortisol test. If it's saliva or urine, we'll get this 3 or 4 measurements during a 24-hour period. So we get kind of a picture of what's going on during the day versus a blood test will say what your hormones are in the blood at that moment of time. So high cortisol symptoms are belly fat, high blood pressure, poor sleep, loss of protein, high cholesterol, vitamin D levels might be lower, acid reflux, ulcers, versus low cortisol. We have more inflammation, immune issues, allergies, asthma, memory, stress. So role of cortisol in our adipose tissue promotes the breakdown of fat. It's involved in our bone, reduces bone formation. Pancreas counteracts insulin. So when cortisol is up, we want to watch our glucose and our insulin levels. Muscle, decreasing amino acid uptake by the muscle. Liver, glucose is generated in the liver. Gluconeogenesis, glycolysis, looking at your glucose storage, glycogen. Okay, so high cortisol. More symptoms of high cortisol you can read over on the slides. Symptoms of low cortisol. And then how cortisol, thyroid, and our ovaries for women are involved, and sex hormones for men and women are going to be impacted. So low cholesterol and DHA can reduce overall testosterone production. High aromatase enzyme activity converts testosterone to estrogen. High 5A reductase levels convert testosterone to DHT. So getting this all tested on the Dutch test is really beneficial. Tested on gas. Then we can see what type of pattern you have. So instead of just looking at your rhythm, but there's, again, why is this happening and how do we create a program for you? If, for example, on my slide is if you have low metabolized cortisol and low free cortisol, or some people can have high metabolized cortisol and low free cortisol, or vice versa. So there's different patterns we look at to indicate if the adrenals are producing too little cortisol and very little cortisol is available to the body. So metabolized is how much cortisol your body is making, and what's available to be used. So sometimes people can be high, but they're not using it, or they can not making a lot, and then they have free cortisol because they're not clearing it. So looking at liver congestion. Hypothalamus is not talking to the pituitary gland, or the pituitary gland's not talking to the adrenals, or the adrenals are not responding to the hormones being signaled. So we got to look at the communication system and looking at why. And this is why we become health investigators, and each client is going to be unique. DHA is often low or low normal with this pattern, and we call this stage 2 or stage 3, looking at the 3-stage model of if you're low normal or low. So that's what we do in our FDN practitioner program, is investigate the patterns that we see and correlate this data with other lab tests. So we never just look at one lab. We don't treat results, but we treat the whole person. So stress and cortisol lifestyle habits make a difference. As I said, I saw multiple doctors. I wanted the quick fix. I went to, all these different people to try to get help, get results. But until I really changed my lifestyle, I didn't get healthy. So possible reasons for high cortisol obviously are stress, but infections, pain, inflammation coming from the food you're eating, pathogens, toxins in your environment, the products you're using, where you live, obesity, insulin, glucose, low carb, Cushing syndrome. Cortisol functions as an anti-inflammatory, so often produced to create inflammation. And possible reasons for low cortisol is more looking as that as a clue. Why is this not working? Why are the adrenals producing too much cortisol? What is going on in the brain not signaling the adrenals to produce more cortisol? So we're always looking at the why and investigating deeper, which leads me to many rabbit holes. So things that I've been looking up is what to avoid if you have high cortisol. Should you be doing these recommendations for HIIT training, stressful workouts, the hot cold therapy, morning cold plunge, sauna, fasting, doing longer fasting? What lifestyle habits that we hear are good for us and help us improve the aging process and our overall health? But what if you have high cortisol? What if you have low cortisol? So helping lower the cortisol, what should we do if we want to get if we have too elevated? Obviously, high sugar intake. You don't want to have a lot of sugar, processed foods. Consuming high amounts of sugar can lead to spikes in the sugar levels, which can cause a stress response in the body, increase cortisol levels that are already high. So avoiding, obviously, sugar, avoiding processed foods, and not prioritizing your sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, the cortisol levels will stay elevated, which can lead to risk of problems. So optimizing your sleep is huge. What to avoid with high cortisol: drinking too much coffee. So a lot of times we have to take out coffee for a few months. Switch it to herbal tea. So try to limit your coffee, tea, anything caffeinated. Alcohol, obviously not good. Drinking alcohol with high cortisol can disrupt sleep and increase your cortisol levels. So if you have high cortisol, best to avoid or limit alcohol. If you have high cortisol, overtraining obviously isn't good because we're already increasing cortisol with exercise. So over-exercising raises those cortisol. So you're not allowing your body enough time to recover between workouts. It's important to take active recovery days and looking at your trackers as metrics on your Aura or Whoop or Apple, and testing your heart rate variability scores and making sure you're bouncing back before you go hard again. So recover, work hard, and then recover longer, but making sure you listen to all those metrics you're measuring. And then, of course, chronic stress in your lifestyle. So if you have high stress lifestyle, we need to identify what are your stressors, what or who are your energy robbers, and figure out what you can do to manage those sources of stress. Sometimes you can't get rid of them, but how we cope with them. If it's meditation, some 1 minute of breath work with a mantra, let go, let be, let them, whatever works to manage your health. If you have really low cortisol, which I've had for years, is trying to get that production up and get the optimal amount, skipping meals might not be beneficial. Too much intermittent fasting may not be good if your body is already depleted. So you have to be careful of going too low of carb, too low of fat. So figuring out the personalized nutrition plan for you, prioritizing your protein and eating mindfully, really taking care of the whole you with the holistic method elements, caffeine, stimulants, alcohol, over-exercising, not so good with really low cortisol. Your body is exhausted. We also want to look at Dr. Mindy Pell's talks about the importance of balancing your hormones. So getting oxytocin up will help lower cortisol if cortisol's elevated. And she talks about the right amount of fasting to get these hormones up. So if we focus on improving oxytocin, that will help cortisol, and managing cortisol will help your insulin levels, and that will help your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone for women. So going into this a little bit more, you can get this in the ebook, but what to avoid with low cortisol, the skipping meals is what I've been wondering about, and doing too low of carbs, maybe adding some sweet potatoes is okay, or some russet potatoes. So fasting is beneficial, but what if we have the adrenal exhaustion, low cortisol levels? The research is limited, so I kind of check with each person. So looking at fasting, intermittent fasting, and cortisol and weight, they have found with the Ramadan intermittent fasted study, cortisol levels and weight in obese individuals found that cortisol levels during the fasted period, they increased during non-fasting period. The study found that they may not be effective for approach for cortisol regulation in obese, time restricted, and cortisol rhythms. And cell metabolism found it improved cortisol rhythms with individuals with metabolic syndrome. So TRF, time restricted feeding, may have beneficial effects on cortisol regulation. So the answer is it depends. So collecting clues, as I did a hair tissue mineral analysis, did a couple of podcasts on this study that I have calcium shell, that I can't get nutrients into the cell, because think of it as a house with concrete poured around it. I can't get nutrients into the cell because I have this calcium blocking all the receptors. So you can see my analysis here for myself, toxic elements, stacking those all together, how elevated my toxic metals, heavy metals are, and looking at ratios of these metals to find out I have slow thyroid and slow adrenal function and a slow oxidizer. So it's probably why it's hard for me to lose weight, and really playing with getting those nutrients up, getting everything in balance will help my metabolism. Looking at slow oxidizer symptoms, chronic fatigue, sugar cravings, need to eat more carbs, low blood sugar, feeling low energy, low depression. So all these different symptoms that are related to so many things, but might be part of mineral imbalancing. So getting HTMA test helps. It's an interesting information, help correlate with your Dutch test and some other labs. Looking at the calcium, magnesium levels in the hair tissue is different than the blood. So it's more of a marker over, I think it was 3 months, versus blood is more current. So slow oxidation is a big part of energy, and also says here that 80 to 85% of adults are slow oxidation state of the body chemistry, their levels. This is going to be feeling that lower energy caused by more impairment of the electron transport system in the mitochondria, where biochemical energy is produced. So if we don't have the right minerals and nutrients needed for promoting the electron transport system, those mitochondria are not producing the energy we need. So more on the slow oxidizers, they tend to struggle with both slow adrenal and slow thyroid, typically have low levels of aldosterone due to their poor retention of sodium and potassium. This can cause rise in our calcium and magnesium, for there's a lack of cellular solubility due to poor sodium and potassium retention. So again, balancing all of our minerals. And that not everyone can be slow at adrenal and slow thyroid function is just looking at your individual tests. Some people can have fast adrenals. As I know, my friend who's a tiny little person, her adrenals and thyroid are off, but has a hard time holding weight on. She keeps getting skinnier and skinnier. So chronic stress and slow oxidizer, looking at adrenal, thyroid tissue. testing that and more. So chronic stress on gut health is a big thing. Stress is on, gut's going to be impacted. Looking at leaky gut, leaky blood-brain barrier, the toxic load on the body is an important part. Looking at the gut health, brain health, adding what nutrients that will help you is reishi, chaga, cordyceps, lion's mane, shiitake, and maitake mushrooms. Here you can see the different benefits, but lion's mane is a big one for brain power. And looking at the vagus nerve, listen to my podcast with Jody Cohen on the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system and Rhonda Collier about heart rate variability. And we did a podcast with Dr. Jay Wiles on HRV. So really important to measure yours, as I did when I first got adrenal exhaustion signs and symptoms in 2013. I actually met Rhonda Collier back there and did a 30-day study with their Sweet Beat Life to measure my HRV every morning and learning how I can control that and improve it with my breathing and taking a time out to reset and reboot. Inflammaging, you might hear about that word, cell senescence, cell debris, gut dysbiosis, immunosenescence, chronic stress and inflammation. So I think a lot of our aging and issues with cell damage is related to external and internal sources of chronic stress. So diving into research on food, gut inflammation and stress, getting inflammation in our gut. It's a physical stressor, food intolerances. So a lot of people that might be non-celiac gluten sensitivity have been found to trigger inflammation in the central nervous system and cause gut-brain axis dysfunction. Also, research on interconnection between the gut-brain axis and HPA axis suggests that you have perhaps non-celiac gluten sensitivity and other food intolerances that will be another source of chronic stress in the body. So we say hidden sources of chronic stress are HIDDEN, hormone imbalances, immune dysfunction, digestion, detoxification, energy, and nervous systems. So looking at chronic inflammation, where is that coming from? So diving into all this, I'm going to stop here, but just head to the website, debbiepotts.net, get your free copy of this, because I went down rabbit hole after rabbit hole: chronic stress and depression, irritable bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, pathogens, inflammation, glucose, insulin, stress and high cortisol, how it equals to weight gain, as we talked a little bit about. Every stress response is a blood sugar response. How to track your glucose changes with the CGM is NutriSense, because I found out my stress level driving a car, if I'm in traffic, will increase my glucose. So really looking at how you respond to stress and how it impacts your blood sugar. Insulin resistance, how that's correlated with stress. Peter T had some great information on insulin resistance. Our FDN program. Insulin resistant causes, insulin resistant signs of high insulin and low insulin, insulin resistance, chronic stress. So I went on and on: obesity, weight gain, mitochondria, cell danger response, biohacks for mitochondria, and supplements, talking about cell danger response. And thyroid, tons of info. Chronic stress and thyroid, a big topic we should go into another show. Stress causes thyroid hormone resistance. Stress causes imbalances in other hormones. And looking at solutions. So I think this is what I work with people individually: testing and not guessing, getting the lab tests, the stool tests, investigating what are their signs and symptoms of stress and metabolic chaos. Looking at signs of chronic fatigue, what it might be coming from, if it's your gut microbiome, if there's part genetics, part mitochondria function, part HPA axis function or dysfunction. And so we want to check all this and measure it, and then retest, 6 months later after working on lifestyle habits. So tons of information, but I always like to start people first on nutrition and the right exercise and their lifestyle habits. So we can't out supplement poor habits, lifestyle habits. We can't out exercise poor nutrition, but really the lifestyle habits, how we manage our stress, is so important to do. So really looking at improving thyroid health, looking at what you can do to manage your stress first, than just taking a medication as thyroid pill to help everything. We need to look at all of this and figure out personalized program for you. So balancing your blood sugar, your gut health, your food intolerances, reducing any chronic infections you might have as Epstein-Barr virus or Lyme disease, looking at your environmental toxins, your sleep cycle. What are you doing at night? How are you starting the morning? So we want to get that sleep hygiene routine. Looking at your exercise, your adaptogens. Are you taking any supplements? Why are you taking them? When are you taking them? Are those good for you? Do you need them? And what time of day are you taking them? So looking at research, working on what you're eating, but how, when, why, and where. Anti-inflammatory diet, nutrition for your adrenals, eat for your hormones. Listen to my podcast with Dr. Elizabeth Bright about more of a high-fat carnivore for feeding your hormones. And getting those nutrients as we need is magnesium, vitamin C, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids. And then working on calming. If you're high strung, maybe you need some L-theanine and some GABA or CBD, some magnolia, relora, some herbal tea to balance you out. But you can't out-supplement those lifestyle habits. So don't try to calm down with all these supplements if you're not doing the work. So getting your mind right, getting some mantras, some positive things, looking at what you can do differently. What can you control? Maybe you can't get rid of your mother-in-law, but you can work on positive attitude. My thoughts need to be positive to create positive energy, positive vibes. Monkey mind, so you're focusing on one thing, not multitasking. So getting mindful, not being around people that you should be enjoying and you're all on your phones. So slowing down, focus, connect, and enjoy being with each other. Playing and laughing more is a really important part. Identifying what your stressors are if you get distracted easily. So really looking at working on the whole you, working on how you eat north to south. So improving digestion, our HRV, our chewing your food, eating slowly, not working on 10 things while you're eating, some mindful versus mindless eating, making sure your stomach's acidic enough to digest and break down that food. And you might need some digestive enzymes. You might need some HCl betaine if you do not have H. pylori infection. So again, excessive consumption of refined sugars, processed foods, vegetable oils, getting rid of the wheat, gluten, and the inflammatory foods is really important. Consistently. Chronic eating, not giving your time for digest rest, your microbiome diversity, detoxification. Is your liver working right to detoxify all those toxins in our environment? Not moving during the day. Too much exercising the black hole, zone 3, you're not doing enough zone 2 and zone 5 and intervals with recovery. How you start the day, morning sunshine. Addicted to busyness, knowing when to slow down. So really what I had to do is, I moved from Seattle to North San Diego, looking out at the mountains in Elfin Forest and Lake Hodges, and I'm out at the beach when I can. And I'm outside swimming, master swimming at lunchtime in the nature, sunshine usually. And we need to change what we can. So taking ownership of your health and working on reducing that stress. If it's journaling, making time with friends that you feel happy around, not the energy robbers. So those are things I work on with clients. So taking time to get outside, creating a space between our environment and ourselves so we have some room to respond rather than react. Eliminate distractions. Figure out what your area of opportunities are in that Goldilocks effect. So let me know if you have questions. Head to debbiepotts.net. You can schedule a discovery call with me and we can talk about my different coaching programs. Even if you just want the assessment, let's go into what you're doing now. Let's do nutritional therapy assessment. Let's do a 3 to 6 day food log with signs and symptoms and your exercise, matching that with your recovery, repair, your heart rate, your glucose, time of day you're eating, and more. So hopefully that gives you some help to get started, but check out the assessment program, or I have a full investigation program or a VIP comprehensive program that's a year, 6 months to a year long. So Let's talk soon. Enjoy the day. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you learned something new today.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.